The twin suns of Meridia Prime were setting, casting long shadows across the dusty marketplace. Merchants shouted from stalls made of scrap metal and plastic tarps, selling everything from alien fruits to rusted ship parts. Jace, a human trader, stood at the edge of the square, arms crossed, watching two shady aliens argue nearby. His cargo ship needed fuel, and he had just delivered a shipment of water recyclers, but the clients were refusing to pay in credits. "You get your payment," one of the aliens hissed, yellow eyes glowing under his hood. "But no credits, only trade, valuable trade." Jace narrowed his eyes, tired of these backwater deals. He had risked his life to bring that shipment through pirate space. "What kind of trade?" he asked coldly. The second alien snapped his fingers, and from behind a dirty cloth curtain, a figure was pushed forward. It was a girl, young, thin, and covered in a long gray cloak. Chains hung loosely from her wrists, and her head stayed low, hiding her face. "Take her," the alien grinned. "High value, very obedient, trained to serve." Jace felt a knot form in his stomach. He had seen slaves before, some broken, some angry, but this one. She looked different. There was no fear in her stillness, only silence, and her posture, though weak, had a strange elegance. He didn't like it, but he needed fuel, and leaving without payment meant starving in deep space. "Fine," he muttered. "Fuel me up and I'll take her." The deal was done, and within minutes, the girl was loaded onto his ship along with the fuel cells. Jace didn't speak to her at first, not even when they left the planet and entered hyperspace. He wasn't proud of the trade, but business in outer sectors wasn't always clean. He guided the ship to autopilot, walked into the back room, and saw her sitting quietly near the wall, still silent, still covered. "What's your name?" he asked, his voice softer now. No answer. He brought her some protein cubes and a water pack. "Eat or you'll collapse," he said, placing them beside her. The girl slowly reached out and took the food, but didn't eat. Instead, she looked at him, just for a second. Her eyes were bright violet, and in that moment, Jace felt like she was seeing through him. She looked away, placed the food beside her, and turned her face back to the wall. Jace walked away, confused. There was something off about her, something that didn't fit the picture of a helpless slave. Later that night, Jace heard a faint sound. He walked toward the cargo bay and saw the girl standing near an old alien artifact he had picked up weeks ago. It was a metallic orb, dead for years, no energy readings, just decoration at this point. But now it was glowing, humming softly. She had her hand on it, her eyes closed, her lips moving in a whisper. "What are you doing?" Jace said, stepping closer. She pulled her hand back instantly and turned to him, her expression unreadable. The orb's glow faded slowly, back to silence. "That thing hasn't worked in years," he said, frowning. "How did you?" "I don't know," she interrupted, her voice low but calm. And then she sat down again, as if nothing had happened. Jace stared at her, mind racing. She hadn't just activated the orb, she had controlled it. And no ordinary slave girl could do that. He pulled out his datapad and scanned the markings on her wrist. Strange symbols appeared, unrecognized by his translator. But deep in the archives, a result pinged. Royal crest of the Velari Empire. His eyes widened. Velari was one of the ancient alien dynasties wiped out in a civil war a decade ago. And this girl, she carried their mark. Jace stepped back slowly. She wasn't a slave. She was someone important, maybe even dangerous. He looked at her again, really looked, and saw the truth hidden beneath the dirt and silence. This trade had changed everything. He hadn't just taken a girl. He had taken a secret one that others might kill to silence. And now, whether he liked it or not, he was part of it. The stars outside the window kept moving. But Jace knew his quiet life as a trader was over. Something bigger had just begun. Asterisk, the girl didn't speak for 2 days. Jace gave her space, brought her food. But every time he entered the room, she sat still, eyes lowered. She never asked where they were going, never complained, never cried. But Jace noticed the small things, how she listened closely when the ship's systems beeped, how she touched the walls gently, like she knew them, and once, when the power flickered, she whispered something under her breath, and the lights came back on. She wasn't normal. She wasn't just some lost girl. Jace sat in the cockpit, watching old records on his datapad. He replayed the moment she activated the alien orb over and over. How did she do it? What technology did she carry in her blood? That night, while he thought she was asleep, he scanned her arm again, this time with deeper settings. The same strange crest appeared, Velari Empire. It wasn't just a symbol, it was a signature genetic encryption built into royal bloodlines long ago. Only high nobles had that mark, and only one house used it. House Sarathia. Rulers of Velari had fallen 10 years ago. Its capital turned to ash by rebels and outsiders. Everyone believed the royal family had been executed. But if the scan was right, someone survived. And she was sitting quietly in Jace's ship, eating ration bars like a prisoner. The next morning, Jace entered the room with a question that couldn't wait any longer. "What's your name?" He asked again, voice calm. She didn't look up, just sipped water slowly. "I need to know who you are," he added. "You activated tech no one's touched in years, and your arm bears a mark from a dead empire." At that, she looked up. There was no fear in her face, only weariness. "My name is Saria," she said quietly. "That's all you need to know for now." Jay stared at her. Saria. The name echoed in his mind, a name spoken in old war reports, a name thought buried with the dead. "Why were you given as payment?" he asked slowly. "I thought you were a slave." "I was," she replied. "And maybe I still am." She stood, letting the cloak slide from her shoulders, revealing a thin but proud frame. "I was sold because I was inconvenient," she said, "because some people would rather pretend I never existed." Jace felt a chill run down his back. She wasn't just noble, she was dangerous. Not because of weapons or power, but because of what she represented. If the galaxy found out who she was, there would be war, chaos, or worse. And she was on his ship. Saria turned and walked to the observation window, staring at the stars. "You think I'm lying?" she asked softly. "No," Jay said. "That's the problem. I believe you." He walked over and stood beside her. "Are they chasing you?" She nodded. "They don't want me captured," she whispered. "They want me erased." Just then, a proximity alarm echoed through the ship. 3 small vessels approaching fast. Jace ran to the cockpit and pulled up the scanners. No identification, no transponder codes. Pirates? No, too fast, too direct. Saria stepped behind him, eyes narrowing. "They've found me," she said. "They'll try to board. And they won't ask questions." Jace swore under his breath and pulled the controls. He had been in skirmishes before, but never while carrying a royal fugitive. The ships opened fire warning shots that sparked across his shields. "I can help," Saria said suddenly, placing her hand on the console. "What?" "I've flown ships like this before," she said. "Just give me one system." Jace hesitated, then pressed a sequence, giving her limited access to propulsion. Within seconds, Saria adjusted the thrust vectors, swinging them between the enemy ships in a sudden burst of acceleration. Lasers missed narrowly, and Jace dove toward a nearby asteroid field. The enemy ships followed, but they weren't ready for the tight turns. One clipped a rock and exploded, the others pulled back. Sensors confused in the dense asteroid field. Jace pulled them into the shadow of a large rock and shut the engines down. Silence returned, broken only by his breath and the distant hum of cooling systems. "You've done this before," he said quietly. "I was trained for many things." Saria replied, brushing dust from her sleeve. "I wasn't supposed to survive." Jace looked at her again, not as a burden, not as a mystery, but as a target. And now that she had saved his life, he couldn't just drop her off at the next station. "You're not my problem," he whispered to himself. But he knew that wasn't true anymore. Saria was more than a passenger, She was the spark that could set the galaxy on fire, and Jace had just chosen to stand beside her. The ship floated quietly in the shadow of a cold asteroid. Outside, the wreckage of the pirate vessel still spun slowly, silent proof of the danger they had just escaped. Inside, Jace sat in the dim glow of his control panel, staring at Saria. She had saved them, controlled the engines like a veteran pilot, and yet she still sat like a prisoner, legs folded beneath her, hands calmly resting in her lap. Jace stood up and finally asked what had been eating at him. "Who are you really?" Saria didn't answer right away. Instead, she walked to the glass window and looked out at the stars. "My people called me princess once," she said quietly. "Then they called me prisoner, traitor, and finally nothing at all." Jace leaned against the wall, watching her reflection. "Why would they do that to you?" he asked. "Because I survived," she replied. "And because survival made me dangerous." Before Jace could ask more, the ship's scanner beeped. A small encrypted signal flashed, one not meant to be noticed. Someone was tracking them. He brought it up on the screen. A stealth beacon, planted deep in the ship's wiring, hidden, small, and old, but active. "They marked you," Jace muttered. "You've been tracked since the day they gave you to me." Saria nodded slowly. "They would never let me go freely," she said. "They just needed to delay their own guilt." Suddenly, the ship shook, a soft tremor under their feet. An incoming shuttle had locked onto their position. Using the beacon, Jace jumped into the cockpit. Checking systems. Too late to run. Whatever was coming was already docking. He grabbed his weapon, a plasma pistol worn from years of trade route trouble. Saria didn't flinch. She moved behind him, not hiding but preparing. The airlock hissed open, and two figures stepped inside. Both wore black armor, smooth, without insignia, faces covered. One raised his hand, palm glowing with an energy scanner. "Step aside," the first one said in a low synthetic voice. "We are here for the girl." Jace aimed his weapon at the man's head. "She's not going anywhere," he said coldly. "You have no idea who she is." The second man stepped forward and, without warning, raised a hand to fire before he could release the blast. Saria moved, faster than Jace thought possible. She ducked, rolled, and slammed her elbow into the man's chest. The armor cracked. The air was knocked from his lungs. Jace fired at the first attacker, striking the side of his helmet. Sparks flew and both men retreated, slamming the airlock. Closed as they fled back to their shuttle. Jace locked the doors, panting. "Those weren't bounty hunters," he said. "No," Saria replied, catching her breath. "They were Black Wraith, secret enforcers of the outer houses. And they don't stop," she added, "until their mission is complete." Jace sat down, hand still on his weapon. "You should have told me," he said. "I needed to know what I was getting into." "I didn't trust you," she answered. "But you stood in front of me just now. That means something." There was a long pause. Jace looked at her and said softly, "If they want you this bad, what are you hiding?" Saria hesitated, then finally spoke. "There's a vault," she said, "hidden on a moon called Velarkar. It holds something only I can open, a seal, a code, and a blood key." Jace raised an eyebrow. "Blood key?" "My DNA," she explained. "The vault is ancient tech. It doesn't recognize words or passwords, only lineage." "What's inside?" he asked. "A beacon," she said. "One that calls the remaining loyal ships of my family's fleet. It also proves my identity publicly. If I activate it," she continued, "I stop being a shadow. I become a threat to every current power that rules by fear." Jay stood slowly. "So we go to this moon and wake up a fleet?" Saria nodded. "If we live long enough to get there." The stars outside shifted as Jace changed course, typing in coordinates he never thought he'd visit. He glanced back at her one more time. "You're not a slave anymore," he said. "Not to anyone." She looked at him, her expression softening just a little. "And you're not just a traitor," she replied. "Not anymore." And just like that, they became more than two strangers. They became a team holding a secret. Worth killing for, and maybe worth dying for too. Through hyperspace. Streaks of light flashing across the windows. Jace sat in the pilot's seat, hands steady on the controls, but his heart raced like a drum. Beside him sat Saria, no longer a silent slave, but a royal fugitive with a target on her back. Neither of them had slept since the attack. The Black Wraiths had left more than just scorch marks behind. They'd left a promise. They would be back. Jace opened the NAV chart and zoomed into the edges of known space. Velarkar, he muttered, highlighting a moon orbiting a dying red star. It wasn't on any trade route. Not even smugglers went near it. And that's exactly why it was perfect. Saria leaned over, pointing at a nebula nearby. That's where we need to pass, she said. It will cloak our energy trail. But it's unstable, Jace smirked. Unstable sounds better than dead, he replied. Let's take our chances. As they approached the swirling gas cloud, the ship's temperature sensors began to spike. Purple lightning flickered outside, dancing along the hull like glowing vines. The ship groaned, but held steady inside. Saria had opened a hidden compartment under the floor. Jace had never noticed it before. Inside lay a small cube, glowing with soft blue light. What is that? He asked. My mother's legacy, Saria whispered. She saved this before the palace burned. It holds a map one that leads to the vault. She held the cube carefully, like it was made of glass. I watched them destroy our home. She continued. I was only a girl, hiding behind a wall. I saw my father fall, my mother vanish, and soldiers laughing while dragging our people away. Jace stayed quiet, letting her speak. This wasn't just about rebellion, he realized. This was personal. This was grief dressed in armor. I thought I died that day, Saria said. But they didn't kill me, they tried to erase me. Now I want to be remembered. Just then, a red alarm flashed on the dashboard. Tracking beacon reactivated, Jace cursed. They found us again. How? Saria checked the cube, then her bracelet. Someone is boosting the signal. From inside the ship, Jace's stomach turned. Wait, you mean? She pulled up a scan. And there it was, another hidden tracker, woven into the food storage unit. Silent. Old tech but triggered remotely. They planted more than one, Jace growled. He grabbed it and tossed it into the ship's airlock, blasting it out into the nebula. Will that stop them? He asked. No, she said. It will only slow them down. The ship rocked again. This time not from the nebula but from weapons fire. A shadow emerged behind them, sleek, black, and armed. A Wraith Hunter-class ship. No way we outrun that, Jace said, flicking switches. We have to fight. Saria stepped forward, placing her hand on the console again. I can overload the rear shields and leave a false energy echo, she said. They'll think we exploded. Jace glanced at her. That'll also drop all our defenses if they catch on. We're dead. I know, she said, but we don't have a choice. The ship trembled as she activated the sequence, sending a burst of energy backward. Flames and static flashed behind them, enough to trick sensors. The enemy ship halted, scanning the wreckage. For a moment, it worked, but then the Hunter launched a probe, fast, small, and heading right toward them. They're checking for bodies, Jace said, gripping the controls. We need to vanish now. Saria opened the side hatch and tossed the cube into a hidden escape drone. Take it to the vault, she said to the AI inside. Code, Crownless Flame. The drone shot off, too small to track, blending into the storm. That map is our only chance, she said. If we die. The path still survives. The probe neared, and Jace made a hard decision. He pulled the ship into a downward dive, heading straight into the gravity well of a collapsing asteroid. Saria, strap in, he shouted. The ship buckled, engines screaming as they descended. The Hunter didn't follow, its systems too delicate for gravity dives. Jace pulled up just before impact, dodging fiery debris. Silence returned, only the deep hum of systems stabilizing. They had escaped barely. Jace looked at her, sweat dripping from his forehead. "I'm starting to think I was better off with bad cargo and low fuel," he said with a weak smile. Saria smiled for the first time. "But you wouldn't trade me back now, would you?" He paused, then shook his head. "Not for all the credits in the galaxy." Outside, stars spun around them. But for now, they had bought a little more time, and the journey to Velarkar continued. Velarkar was not what Jace expected. From orbit, the moon looked like a graveyard, gray, silent, cracked like old bone. The kind of place no one would bother visiting. But to Saria, it was holy ground. As their ship landed on the edge of a vast canyon, Jace looked at the terrain in disbelief. "There's nothing here," he muttered, scanning the dust storms and jagged cliffs. "No cities, no signals, not even a rat." Saria stepped off the ship, pulling her cloak tighter against the wind. "This place was hidden on purpose," she said. "My ancestors built it before the stars knew our name." She walked ahead without fear, as if her feet remembered a path her mind barely did. Jace followed, scanning for traps, life signs, anything. All he got was silence. After 2 hours of walking, they reached a stone cliff with strange symbols etched into its side. To Jace, it looked like a rock, but Saria stepped forward and placed her palm on the center. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a low hum vibrated through the ground, and the rock wall split open, revealing a dark staircase that led deep underground. Jace blinked. "Yeah, definitely not just a rock," he whispered. They descended slowly, each step lit by old flickering blue lights that came alive with Saria's presence. The air was thick with age, but also memory. Jace felt it in his bones like the place was watching. At the bottom, they entered a massive chamber, round and domed. In the center stood a pedestal made of black crystal. Around it were ancient machines, half dead and half dreaming, waiting for someone to awaken them. Saria walked straight to the pedestal and drew a small blade from her sleeve. "What are you doing?" Jace asked, stepping forward. "The vault is sealed with blood," she said calmly, and cut her palm, letting a drop fall onto the crystal. The entire room shook. Machines lit up, one by one, forming patterns of light that danced across the ceiling. A voice echoed, female, regal and powerful, though clearly artificial. "Saria, of House Saravia." It said, "Royal line confirmed, vault integrity restored, throne protocol resuming." Panels in the walls opened, revealing royal armor, scrolls, weapons, and a floating sphere of light. Saria stepped toward the sphere, tears forming in her eyes. "My mother's message," she whispered. The sphere expanded and projected a hologram, a beautiful woman dressed in royal robes. Her voice trembled with emotion. "My child, if you are seeing this, then the worst has come true. You were not meant to carry this alone, but I knew you might have to." Saria fell to her knees as the hologram continued. It told of betrayal, of secret alliances that overthrew the royal house, of the hidden vault, and the emergency command key that only Saria's blood could activate. Jace watched quietly, feeling like he was inside history. This wasn't a slave. This wasn't a fugitive. This was the last hope of a forgotten empire. The hologram ended with one final line. "Rise, daughter of Saravia, and remind the stars who you are." Saria stood slowly, face hard but glowing with something new purpose. She turned to the central console and inserted the cube she had sent earlier through the drone. The vault pulsed with light, and a signal burst out, encrypted, ancient, but loud enough for distant ships to hear. Jace's wrist scanner beeped. He checked it and let out a low whistle. "Multiple ship pings," he said. "Old Villari models. Responding to your signal." "They're coming," she said. Voice steady. "Yes," Jace replied, "but we don't know if they're friends or scavengers." She nodded. "I need to be ready for both." She stepped toward one of the armor stands and placed her hand on the chest plate. The suit unfolded and attached itself to her body like a second skin, lightweight, but clearly designed for command. For the first time, she didn't look like a slave. She looked like a queen. Jace stared at her in silence. "You really are royalty," he said, half smiling. Saria looked at him and answered quietly. "I was always royalty," she said. They just buried the truth beneath chains. Outside the vault, the sky began to shimmer ships, dozens of them, approaching like shadows through the clouds. The stars were changing, and so was she. Jace knew this moment was the calm before the storm. And standing next to her, he realized he wasn't just a witness anymore. He was part of the legend. Now and legends were just getting started. The sky above Velikar had never seen so many ships. From the dusty cliff above the ancient vault, Jace watched the vessels descend like birds of prey. Each one bore markings of the old Villari royal fleet symbols. Thought lost to time, Saria stood beside him, wrapped in the sleek armor of her ancestors, no longer the silent girl he once traded for. Now she was a commander preparing to claim a forgotten throne. But not every ship carried loyalty. Some captains answered the beacon for duty. Others answered it for power. Jace adjusted the ship's external broadcast system and turned to her. "You sure they'll follow you?" "I'm not," Saria replied, her voice calm. "But they'll listen, at least once." Inside the vault, the old council chamber hummed back to life. Holograms flickered on, displaying incoming signals from every ship now orbiting the moon. One by one, commanders appeared, some in uniforms, others in scavenged gear. An old alien male with sharp eyes spoke first. "Your signal woke long-forgotten codes, girl," he said. "But codes are easy to steal, prove you are who you say you are." Saria stepped into the projection field, raised her hand, and let the armor respond. The crest of House Sarathia glowed bright across her chest. Then she spoke, not loud, but with weight. "My name is Saria Sarathia, daughter of the fallen. Queen," she said. "My family was betrayed, my home burned, and I was sold in silence. But I survived, and I returned, because truth cannot stay buried forever." She paused, then added, "If you're here to serve the old crown, you already know what's right. If you're here to steal it, then understand this. I didn't crawl back from death just to kneel again." There was silence on the feed. Then a few officers stood up in salute. One by one, more followed. Jace watched the loyalty spread like sparks on dry grass, but not everyone bowed. A deep voice cut through the feed, low and full of anger. "You speak like a queen, but power doesn't come from blood," said a towering warlord. He wore battle scars like medals, and his ship was armed like a fortress. "I won't follow a child born to a crown, I follow strength." Saria met his gaze through the hologram. "Then test me," she said. "If I win, you bend the knee. If I fall, you may have my bones." The warlord laughed. "Tomorrow, my ship lands," he said. "You and I know weapons, no lies. Fight me like a true heir." After the feed ended, Jace pulled her aside. "Are you out of your mind?" he said. "That guy eats mercenaries for breakfast." Saria's eyes didn't blink. "If I back down, the others will follow his doubt," she said. "I need to show them I'm not just a name, I'm fire," Jace sighed. "Then I'm training you tonight." That evening, in the shadow of the vault, they trained until the moons rose. Jace taught her how to predict movement, how to use footwork instead of brute force. Saria was faster body trained from childhood, but her time as a slave had dulled her edge. Still, she moved with purpose. Now, she was remembering who she used to be and becoming something stronger. The next morning, the warlord's ship landed like thunder. The ground trembled as he stepped out, muscles gleaming beneath tribal armor. His name was Varaka, name known across pirate clans and broken empires. He stood 2 heads taller than Saria, laughing as he saw her. She brought a human as her champion? He joked, pointing at Jace. "I expected steel, not scavengers." Saria stepped forward, her voice like sharpened wind. "You'll remember my steel soon enough." They faced each other in the stone arena, surrounded by captains, soldiers, and ancient machines. No weapons, only raw skill. The fight began fast. Varuk lunged, fists like hammers. Saria dodged low, spun behind him, and kicked hard at his back. He staggered but didn't fall. He roared and charged again, fists slamming into the ground where she had stood moments before. Jace watched, breath held. He had seen many warriors, but none who moved with the mix of royal training and survival instinct like she did. Then, in a flash, she feinted left and struck his temple with her elbow. Vorak dropped to one knee, blood at his lip. She didn't stop. She pressed forward, relentless, until the warlord finally raised his hand in surrender. The crowd exploded. With noise, some in shock, others in cheer. Vorak stood slowly and bowed his head. "You are not your mother," he said. "You are something else, something stronger." Saria turned to the gathered captains. "Will you follow me now?" she asked. They raised their fists in unison, and in that moment, the stars around Villarkar burned a little brighter, because their queen had returned not by blood alone, but by fire, strength, and will. The ships now orbited Villarkar like loyal wolves circling their queen. Dozens of captains had sworn their oath to Saria. Vorak, the warlord once full of pride, now stood silently behind her, his head bowed in respect. The old royal banner of House Sarathia once again flew on hollow displays across the command decks. But the moment wasn't safe. It was fragile like glass warmed by fire. And across the stars, enemies stirred. Some saw her return as hope, others as war. In the throne chamber below the surface, Jace stood behind her as Saria approached the final control panel. "This is it," he whispered. "One signal and the galaxy knows the crown is alive." She nodded but didn't press the key. Right away, her eyes scanned the room where her mother once stood. "Do you think I'm ready?" she asked softly. Jace didn't answer immediately. He walked beside her, looked into her tired but burning eyes. "You bled, you rose, and you fought giants," he said. "If you're not ready, no one ever will be." Saria smiled faintly. Not the smile of a girl hiding fear, but of a woman accepting her future. Her fingers hovered over the button. Then, with a breath, she pressed it. The beacon lit up brighter than anything in the chamber. A golden wave pulsed through the communication channels of forgotten systems. Planets once under Villari rule lit up again. Ancient satellites turned back on, and across the stars, hidden agents of the crown received one message: the Empress lives. Back on the surface, dozens of royal ships formed into a perfect V formation. Saria stood at the platform in full armor, her presence commanding and proud. Jace stood beside her, not in armor, not with rank, but as something greater, her witness, her first believer. A commander stepped forward and bowed. "Empress," he said, "we await your first order." Saria looked at Jace before speaking, then turned to the fleet. "We will not rebuild the old empire," she said. "We will build something new. No thrones built on chains, no crowns drowned in blood. We will bring balance, dignity, and justice to those left in shadows." Cheers erupted across the coms, and in that moment, Saria Sarathia became more than a survivor. She became a symbol. Later that night, under the twin moons, Jace sat alone near the ship. The stars shimmered above, but his mind was quiet. Saria walked over, still wearing her armor, but her face was softer, gentler now. "You never asked for any of this," she said, sitting beside him. Jace shrugged. "I only wanted fuel," he said with a smirk. "And I got a revolution instead," she chuckled. "You saved me, Jace," she said, "when no one else even looked twice." "I didn't save you," he replied. "I just gave you space to rise." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a ring crafted from the same crystal that powered the vault. She placed it in his hand. "What's this?" he asked. "My people think I should name a royal protector," she said. "Someone to stand beside me, not behind." Jay stared at the ring. He never wanted titles, never wanted power. But when he looked at her, he knew he'd protect her for the rest of his life. He slipped the ring on and stood. "Fine," he said, "but I still get to call you kid when we're off duty." Saria laughed. "I'd expect nothing less." From a silent trade to a star-burnt empire, from a frightened slave girl to a crowned empress, their journey had rewritten fate, and somewhere deep in the stars other forgotten souls were watching. Other chains waiting to be broken. Because of her, because of him, hope had returned. Not in fire, not in blood, but in loyalty, in strength, in the bond of a human and an alien who refused to be defined by what they were given.